Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Today's a very important day for those folks, the chosen few, the tippy top of the economic mountain, folks making $1 million a year or more, earned income, mind you, people who collect a paycheck. If you make $1 million a year, today is the day you no longer have to pay any more Social Security tax going forward. Today's the day you have contributed everything that you're going to for the entire year. Now, the other 94, 95% of the country, sorry, you're going to contribute every day for the rest of the year. Because while the cap has gone up a little bit, we're up to $160,200. The vast majority of working people, well under 160 grand. And look, I've never been able to get away from paying into Social Security. Not that I want to. Social Security is an incredible program. It is worth saving. It's worth defending. It's worth expanding, which is why the right is losing their mind, because they can't destroy it and profitize it. But this is one of those moments we're having the conversation of how we fund our most important, most successful anti-poverty program in the history of civilization. Is a good time. Today, a good time. Because when you have a percentage of the population who today's the last day, they're going to spend a dime. Now, understand, you've got the Elon Musks of the world who pay nothing into Social Security because they don't collect a paycheck. We've got our billionaire class who literally pays nothing, which we should be having a conversation on how we fund, again, the most vital, most important, most successful anti-poverty program ever devised. Maybe we should be talking about that. But the thing is when they put these caps in place, weren't there before. Thank you, Ronald Reagan. Thank you, 1983. No one really in that moment, because again, the people you have to put yourself in the moment. I remember 1983. We were still seeing wage increases somewhat. The 70s had slowed things. The end of the 70s had slowed things. But from the end of World War II, through the mid 70s, wages and productivity, they walked hand in hand. So the more productive companies were, the more profits they earned, the more their workers earned. Because unions were much stronger, they sat down, they negotiated for a portion of the wealth that labor created. And it was a successful partnership. Capital got what they wanted, more. Workers got what they needed, better wages, hours, conditions. Employers got what they needed, more profits. Consumers got what they needed, quality products. It seemed like a pretty good, pretty workable, pretty manageable system. And then the greed. Then the billionaires. Then our titans of industry decided, no, we want more. We're better. We're smarter. And I remember having a conversation with my grandfather. And this is one of those things that it really illustrates how this all came about. This idea that working people could have successful lives and could, through their labor, be able to support their families and do better and enjoy not just an existence, the old, 1912 bread and roses idea that, yeah, bread, yes, bare minimum, existence, a house, food on the table, but roses too, some of the nice things. And I had remembered, years ago having a conversation as the union busting was ramping up. This was years after Patco. This was years of union decline. And I remember going, back in your day, things were going forward. Unions were expanding, workers had more power. And he told me a story about, he decided for one of the anniversaries, and I don't remember which one, they were married forever, 50, 60 years. He said, the one year your grandmother wanted to go see this play, and we, wanted to do the dinner at the top of the town, which was the big restaurant in Cleveland at the time. It was up in the tower. You could look down on the city. It was a really, swanky place, and he had saved up for it for a while. This was not something that was just, hey, we're going to do this on a Friday night. This was a real special occasion. So he did the things that you have to do. And I give him credit because man brain goes, what, I got to make reservations? He actually did that. Bought the tickets, made the reservations, did all that stuff, showed up on time, very solid working class ethic. And they went to the top of the town where the restaurant was. And his boss was there. And his boss's wife was there. And my grandfather and my grandmother got seated right away because they had reservations. The boss evidently didn't think, maybe we should have reservations. Just showed up and was, as my grandfather remembered it, visibly miffed by the fact that this is what was going on. So my grandmother and grandfather, they have dinner. They leave. They go over to where the play is. They get there early. They get seated early. They're enjoying the evening, not thinking anything more about what happened at dinner. But they notice that there are 2 seats next to them. And this, again, if anyone who knows me knows the Smith Cloud, I know exactly where I got it. I got it from my grandfather. Because there are 2 seats empty. The lights go down, the curtain goes up, and all of a sudden you hear a kerfluffle on the aisle, and people are, under their breath, get here on time, and just this kind of anger. And you know who it is. It's the boss and his wife. They had to get there late because, they got to dinner, they didn't get seated till later. And he remembered at that moment, he said, I remember thinking at that moment, I'm going to pay for this because this will not go unpunished. And he said, the reality is the rich and powerful don't want us around. They don't want the dirty, unwashed masses. They don't want the people who have dirt under their fingernails around. They want us to do their work, make them their profit, clean up after them, but not in the same spaces that they entertain. And again, this is going back into the 60s. And he was telling me this story. And the more I think about that story, the more this is the world we're in. And what happened is corporate America said, no, we don't want the dirty rabble having, access to, good wages and health care and retirement security that we bestow upon them. This idea that we give them these things without the understanding that without the labor of those people who show up every day, punch the clock, do the work, blood, sweat, tears, all of that stuff, there's no profit for them because there's no profit genie. They just rub a lantern and money comes. There's no cash trees. There's none of that. It's working people putting their blood, sweat, and tears into things. And what's happened over these last 40 plus years is we have seen an assault, really an all-out assault on wages, an all-out assault on workers as their defined benefit pension plans were stolen and divested, as their health care has been shifted from employers paying it to now, got to have skin in the game. And they've trained a working class. And I go back to my grandparents. They were trained to believe that they had the power to make lives better. My grandfather started, on a coal truck shoveling coal 12 hours a day for 17 cents an hour. It wasn't until the FDR years that they made a 25-cent minimum wage. And it was because of the unions that they were able to buy their first home and to retire with dignity, raise their children, and do all that stuff. So in 1983, understand, that generation grew up believing that what they had built was going to continue. That, yes, you're going to share in the wealth that your labor creates. Of course. Of course, we're not going to have CEOs making 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 times what the average worker makes. Of course, that's never going to happen. And yet here we are 40 years later, and you go, holy blank, look at what they've done. When the top 1% has seen their wealth grow almost 1,000 times, and the bottom 90% has barely seen their standard of living keep up, let alone grow. So understand, in 1983, when they put this cap in place, very, very, a handful of people were at that cap. And the rich people, they were paying into it too, because they hadn't figured out quite yet how to game the system. Now, you give them the incentive. Well, they figured it out all right. The difference is we, the voting populace, we never kept up. We never said, this is what we demand, which is why I've been saying for years, we need to scrap the cap entirely. And we need to make all income. Whether you get it from gambling on Wall Street, whether you won it in the lottery, whether it fell from heaven like manna from heaven. All of that should go into funding, again, the most prosperous, the most secure, the most successful anti-poverty program ever. But our friends on the right can't have that. So what you see Republicans doing is now they're going to talk about raising the age. We're going to make it so that you don't get it. So you don't live long enough to get it. Without talking about the main thing, which is how do we get those people like the folks today who the last day they're going to pay into it to continue to pay for the entire year? How do we make sure that the folks who, like Elon Musk, who get away with not paying anything, put something in? But that's not what Republicans are talking about. They're talking about we're going to raise the age. But that's not a cut. No, it's not a cut. And they'll tell you, we're not cutting Social Security. No. We're saving it. We're making it more secure for the future so that you never get it now. And they're calling this idea of lengthening the time before you can get to it being budget neutral. Oh, you gotta love the language. I mean, it is quite remarkable the things that they get away with, and it comes down to we don't hold them accountable. And this is one of those times where I'm hoping, as this Social Security discussion ramps up, because remember, Biden did that thing at the State of the Union, got all the Republicans to agree. No, we would never. How dare you think we would cut Social Security? We'd never do so. No. And yet, it's what it's what their fantasy has been for decades. It's who they are. It's what they want. It's what they'll do. So today, an important day, and I think a day of activism, saying, look, we want to defend Social Security. We want to expand Social Security. We want to make sure that it's there for future generations. Full disclosure, I've been very fortunate over the years. I actually collected Social Security as a child. When my mother passed at 13, it was the survivor's benefit. It was the Social Security that she wasn't going to get that helped my grandparents support me for the years from 13 to 18. Oddly enough, something that Paul Ryan, former Speaker of the House, one of the young guns, with McCarthy and Cantor, who evidently did keg stands wanting to destroy Social Security and Medicare. It's something we share because we both lost a parent and both collected Social Security. The difference is we both climbed the ladder. I want to make sure that we make the ladder wider so more people can get up it, as where he wants to burn it down. That, I guess, not surprising when you look at the side of the aisle. But we're in a moment right now where Social Security is going to be the bedrock of retirement for the next generation because, again, corporate America has, between you and me, really screwed a generation of workers by stealing their pensions, and there's nothing at the end of the road. And this way, if they can destroy Social Security, you never leave the workforce. It's brilliant. Work until you die. I want to hear your thoughts. What should we do with Social Security? Do you believe that we could put it into Wall Street and let the gamblers get a hold of it? Pay a little vig to the House in the hopes that maybe it's better? Or do we continue to strengthen it, expand it, demand more of our wealthy, the ones we've bestowed all of the riches possible upon? I'm going with scrap the cap. But you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Love to hear your thoughts.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I had a conversation earlier today with a friend who we were talking about Joe Biden. And I said, look, I love what Joe Biden has done as president. He was not my first choice. In fact, he wasn't my second choice. He wasn't my third choice. May have been fourth, more likely fifth. First choice was Bernie Sanders. I've always been a big Bernie Sanders choice, a big fan. Jay Inslee was my second choice. Loved his idea of the a just transition for the Green New Deal. This idea of moving to renewable energy. This idea of moving us in a direction that's going to transition to where we need to go energy-wise, but do it in a way that working people don't take it on the chin. Look, the reality is I was interviewed not too long ago, and someone asked me if I was in favor of the Green New Deal and transitioning, and I said, yeah, as long as working people don't take it on the chin, as we do in every transition. This is one of those moments where you go, if we can figure out how to move in a direction that the working people don't get screwed and the wealthy get wealthier, then yeah, I'm all in favor of it. But until we can figure that out, I don't know how it happens, because the reality is most working people, they're trying to figure out how to pay yesterday's light bill. They don't have time to think about tomorrow. They're worried about keeping the jalopy of a car on the road today to get to work, because if they lose their job, they're out of a house. So, if we can figure out how to deal with that, then yeah, all in favor. But until you get there, and Inslee had a plan. And this is where, I go, whatever happened to Jay Inslee? I would have thought that Biden would have, maybe made him the energy czar or something. But anyway, my main point is I like what Biden's done. And I look at what he's doing now with the CHIPS money that's going to the semiconductor industry. They're saying, yeah, we're going to build the semiconductor industry up. We're going to build the plants. But while you're building this, and I love this, while you're building this, you've got to provide high quality, guaranteed, affordable, high quality childcare for the workers who build the facilities and the workers who operate the facilities. Again, this is using federal dollars to set the bar, to draw a line in the sand and say, corporate America, you're going to have to help these workers. I love the fact that we've finally got someone who understands and is pushing us to use our tax dollars and to use our investments in a way to make working people's lives better. This a good thing. Just my thought. Want to hear yours. Let's go to the phones. Got Alice on one. Alice, how are you?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. What I wanted to say was the Republican Party wanting to get rid of Social Security, and it's not an entitlement. We pay into it. But the big thing, I believe, is they realize that, oh, my goodness, these people, we can't work them until the day they die. And I think that's really what it basically is.
Yep. No, I mean, ask a construction worker. who's in his late 50s, early 60s. Can you make it to 70? Most of them will tell you no, the body's worn out. Ask a nurse who's had to lift people out of bed and deal with that. Can you make it to 70? No. It's unfathomable that you would make these working people work until they're 70. Even 67, I think, for a lot of industries is too long. But this is the direction we're going.
Oh, absolutely. And they keep raising the when my dad retired back in the 70s, it was 65. And now they just keep raising it. It's crazy. But have a good evening, Rick.
Thanks, Alice. Appreciate it. No, I mean, this is the reality of the moment we're in. And this is why I like what Biden's done. Like I said, wasn't my first choice. But doing the things that I think are fantastic. For instance, I point to the latest fit that Grover Norquist is having. Grover Norquist, the guy who said he wants government so small he can drag it in a bathtub and drown it. He is so ticked off at the Biden nominee for labor secretary to replace Marty Walsh. He tweeted out, Biden's labor nominee, Julie Su, is a threat to independent contractors and freelancers nationwide. And, he's going, look, 90% of independent contractors in California were against AB 5. For those who don't know, AB 5 was the independent contractor bill that actually put some language into, are you truly an independent contractor? There was the ABC test that basically just said, are you someone who controls your own work? Do you do your own work? Does the person that you're working for have direct control over your movements? Is what you're doing what the employer normally does? For instance, if you're talking about a trucking company, or you're talking about a warehouse and they want to bring in warehouse workers. And they say, we're going to bring you in as an independent contractor. You can't do that. You hire people for that. Now, if you need an electrician to come in and wire the light bulbs, that is an independent contractor. It's a guy who's going to come in, going to do a specific job outside of your normal scope of business, have a direct contract. You're going to pay that person. It's going to be a period of time, and they're done. They're gone. They're done. On to the next job. They have complete control over their work environment. That's what an independent contractor was supposed to be. What people like Grover want is they want everybody to be an independent contractor. Everybody's going to be their own boss. And I see how well that has worked out in the trucking industry. Because as I say all the time, having spent my entire working life in the trucking industry, we try out all the bad ideas on truck drivers. Because a lot of the times they're so divided and hard to organize that it's easy to heap bad things on them. Deregulation being one of the big things. Hey, you're going to be your own boss? Absolutely. I'm going to get my own truck and I'm going to run to the wheels fall off of them. And what we find out is it's basically a sweatshop on wheels. You're basically working for a company, following their rules, wearing their uniform, going where they tell you, when they tell you, how they tell you, but you're your own boss. It's quite remarkable. Now, the reason I love this Julie Shu is she's pushing back on this. Again, returning to a time where work was rewarded, where not everybody was their own boss, buying their own stuff, taking on all of the risk, while the very well-to-do walk off with all the profit. Oh, did I mention also independent contractors can't organize, which is really the reason they love independent contractors. They're exploitable. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1940. That was the day that Screen Actors Guild union member Hattie McDaniel became the first African-American to win an Oscar. She won Best Supporting Actress for the role of Mammy in the classic movie Gone with the Wind. During the course of her career, Hattie McDaniel portrayed either an enslaved person, a maid, or a cook nearly 100 times. For black actors and actresses in Hollywood, opportunities for work were often limited to playing these kind of characters. In real life, the actress was only one generation away from slavery. Both of her parents had been enslaved. Her father enlisted to fight in the Civil War after the Emancipation Proclamation. During her career, McDaniel frequently came under criticism from groups such as the NAACP for the type of characters she played on screen. She reportedly responded by declaring, "I would rather make $700 a week playing a maid than being one." Black actresses and actors faced discrimination that went beyond the roles they were offered. McDaniel and other black cast members were not allowed to attend the premiere of Gone with the Wind in Atlanta. The Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, which hosted the 1940 Oscar ceremony, did not allow black patrons. McDaniel had to receive special permission to attend the event. She was not permitted, however, to sit with the rest of the cast, and instead had to sit at a small table against the wall. In 87 years, only 14 black actors and actresses have received an award from the Academy. In 2016, not one person of color was nominated for an acting category. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
The Wreck of the Old 97 is a classic bluegrass song recounting a spectacular train crash in 1903, caused by the company's demand that the engineer speed down a dangerous track to deliver cargo on time. 120 years later, we have the wreck of the Norfolk Southern, a devastating crash caused by the corporate demand that it be allowed to run an ill-equipped, understaffed, largely unregulated 2-mile train carrying flammable, cancer-causing toxics through communities, putting profit over people and public safety. This rolling bomb of a train was hardly unique, for the handful of multi-billion-dollar railroad giants that control the industry also control lawmakers and regulators who are supposed to protect the public from public-be-damned profiteers. A measure of their arrogance came just 2 years ago when an Ohio legislative committee dared to consider a modest proposal for just a bit more rail safety. Norfolk Southern executives squawked like Chicken Little, asserting a plutocratic doctrine of corporate supremacy on such decisions. They even imperiously proclaimed that state lawmakers have no right to interfere in safety matters. Ohio's Chamber of Commerce dutifully echoed Norfolk's concern for profit over people, testifying that, quote, Ohio's business climate would be negatively impacted by the bill. Never mind that Ohio's public safety climate can literally be negatively impacted by train wrecks. The Chamber postulated that a crew safety provision in the Ohio bill was illegal because, quote, it would interfere with the employment relationship between employers and their employees. Yes, that's a corporate claim that executives have an inalienable right to endanger workers. This is Jim Hightower saying, sure enough, bowing to the corporate powers, Ohio lawmakers rejected the safety bill. And that, boys and girls, is why train catastrophes keep happening.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So again, as I said, the reality is today, for those making over $1 million a year, the last day that they're going to be paying into Social Security. And I don't think that's right. I think we need to devise a system, well, where we're all paying into it. Because as I said at the beginning, this is the most successful, the best anti-poverty program ever devised. And as a society, if we're not going to let people die on the streets, if we don't want Granny going back to eating cat food, on living in indigent warehouse kind of nursing homes like I remember as a kid, Social Security is one of those things I think we need to hold on to. And here to share some thoughts on today, the big story today, I've asked my good friend Alex Lawson to come share some thoughts. He's the executive director of Social Security Works, socialsecurityworks.org, their website. Alex, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me, as always.
So this is the big day with those fortunate who are making over $1 million a year. This is the last day they're going to have to pay any Social Security whatsoever. They've made it to the end.
Yeah, it's true. If you make $1 million a year today, from this point forward, you're not going to pay another nickel into Social Security. And, the rest of us pay in all year long. And that's the reality, is that for the vast majority of the American people, I think something like 94%, they're going to pay in on all of their income. And some people, some people who are making just over 160,000, there are some geographic places where, I don't think, I think there's a case to be made for, not hitting maybe the dollars right above 160,000, which is the current cap. But you look at someone like Elon Musk, that guy probably stops paying in on like the first second of January 1st. And there's no reason that he shouldn't be paying into the system on all of his income, his earned income, his wages, and his unearned income, because that's how the billionaires have been getting their money around the Social Security system. It's not just the cap,
right,
which makes the funding of Social Security incredibly regressive, right? I mean, like, really, it's very abnormal in our system to have a tax that actually tax, minimum wage workers up to a point, and then billionaires are like, the richer you are, the smaller the tax is. Makes no sense. So, the remedy to this situation is so obvious. Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren just introduced it in the Senate, Jane Schakowsky in the House. John Larson has his bill in the House. They're slightly different, but the concepts are the same. We expand Social Security benefits for everyone, and we pay for it by just getting millionaires and billionaires to pay in on all of their income, just like the rest of us. One of the questions between the two versions is just, do you exempt people up to 250,000, so from 160 to 250, or do you go up to 400,000? And so in Sanders Warren bill, it's everyone making over 250,000, and in Larson's version, it's 400,000. But that's a fine debate to have, right? Yep. We call those in DC a conferenceable difference. Those are two very good pieces of policy. And if we pass them in the House and the Senate, we'll bring them together, and we'll create a third one where we take the best parts from both of them. But it's not a dire situation, Rick. But like, what the billionaires are selling is that Social Security is the issue. That's not true. The billionaires are the issue, right? Social Security is fine. It's just the billionaires' criminal greed is hurting, the world, and is hurting very specifically the Social Security system, but we know exactly how to fix it.
Yeah, and the other part that I brought up, because I said at the beginning that Elon Musk doesn't pay anything, because I don't know that he actually collects a salary. I think we need to discuss what income is. It's just not the wage income that you're paid in a paycheck. It should be everything that comes in. And then look, the reality is a lot of people don't have realized income. You look at these people, Musk's worth, gazillions of dollars in stock and has all this wealth. There's got to be a way that we say, some of that is used to help, the folks who really created that wealth. The working people who go up every day and actually do the work that creates that wealth.
Yeah, there's a lot of creative ways of going after unearned income as well. Capital gains. The truth is, as you know, Rick, the bosses have an army of lawyers who their whole job is to just get the loot around the system so that they don't pay in. They pay as little as possible in, and the difference is they have an army of lawyers devising. I wish I remembered the details, but like one time Elon Musk was able to put billions of dollars into an IRA through some super tricky setup that basically Congress had to specifically disallow this one thing. And it was billions of dollars. And so like his lawyers, they got paid money to find those loopholes. But when you're playing with billions of dollars, that's what it comes down to. So but again, it's not that hard to find how you go after that income. I mean, I have a personal favorite, Thomas Paine, founding father. He wrote about it in Agrarian Justice, one of the first pamphlets that promoted an American form of social insurance. And his was funded with the estate tax. I think the estate tax is one of the most fair taxes there is. It's not even on a person, it's on the estate after they pass.
Oh, you mean the death tax? You're talking death tax. See, here you go, death and taxes again.
But, everybody does die, and without a functioning state, there is no estate, right? It is literally a legal construct that is entirely created because of the society and the system of laws that we live in. So, I mean, you can do really, you can do anything when it comes to policy. So why not, a 99% estate tax on estates over $5 billion? Who's going to argue against that? I'm sure people with 6 billion, but you can do a lot of things. But the thing that we can't do is let this same system continue, right? Because the inherent contradictions in it are really approaching that place where the system is starting to fail, and political collapse is a thing. I don't see it, imminent in America, but you get wafts of it coming through, like an attempted coup during one of the years of the most unrest from police violence against the Black community, communities of color, and COVID and lockdown. I mean, there's so much going on. That was a knife's edge. And really, democracy could have been lost. American democracy could have been lost on January 6th. That sort of instability, that the society is out of balance, that can't continue. And there's only one cause of it. Again, Social Security is not the issue. It's definitely not public education that is causing social dislocation. It's the billionaires. It's the fact that their greed knows no bounds. It's the fact that, they lobbied, they spent ungodly amount of money to remove any safety regulations, like just having functioning brakes on trains that carry toxic chemicals, when everyone was saying this is going to result in a disaster. And they're like, I don't care. I can make a little bit more money so I can buy another yacht. And that's what they're focused on.
Yep.
And what do we then have? A disaster. And who pays? The workers. Who were the ones ringing the alarm bell? It was the unions. It was the workers being like, this system is going to crumble. It can't handle the stress of what it has to do transporting these chemicals, professional labor, very, very professional labor, and satisfy the greed of the billionaire class.
Yeah, the greed knows no
one
bounds.
or the other.
No, I remember the arguments of the 80s that if we just gave all the smart people all the money, they would know what to do with it, and then it would trickle down to the rest of us. I still remember I had a college professor explain it to me, and I'm going, doesn't make any sense, because what's going to make it trickle down? Nothing. And it's what is exactly worked out. A handful of people have controlled all the wealth, and wages have been stagnant and declining for 40 years. Healthcare security's been robbed from us. Retirement security's all but gone. And Social Security is that one last thing. And you've got a generation who believes they're going to see a UFO before they see a Social Security check. So how do we turn that around then? Because, again, it comes back to messaging. And the right has done a great job of saying, no, we need to we need to make the retirement age 70, and it's budget neutral. This isn't a cut. No, it's a cut. It's a 3-year cut. How do we turn that around?
It's a 21% benefit cut for everyone. So I think it is messaging, but I think more it's organizing, and it has to be the same sort of organizing that we're seeing in labor that has a bit more militancy than we've seen previously. It really needs to be people standing up, like you saw in France. In France, they just tried to raise the retirement age, which again is not to do with what age you retire. You can retire at whatever age you feel you have enough resources to live at the standard of living that you want in what you consider retirement. The so-called retirement age is just a formula that we use to calculate how much your benefits are going to be. So it's the question not at the age at which you retire, but at how much can you retire on? And you have these guys, the Rick Allen, we got this video of him. He's like, oh, I think people want to work longer. They're telling me they want to work to 70. That dude's worth like $50 million. So like, yeah, I don't know who you're talking to, but that's not people out in America. They definitely don't want to work till they're 70. And everyone else doesn't want a 20% benefit cut.
Yep. Let's ask the person who has to clean up after him if that person wants to work till they're 70, cleaning up after his
exactly.
person.
Exactly. And that's what it comes down to, I think, is that there is a timidness in what I think, like the institutional left, I don't know what to call it, but it's a timidness to point out that all of the things that you said, stagnant wages, crumbling healthcare, right? Coverage going away, defined benefit pension plans eliminated, hospitals closing in rural areas like clockwork now. It's just accelerating. And that is bad. But it's like we tell the story without saying who's doing it, who benefits from all of those things. Everything I just said makes people billionaires.
Yep.
That's how they do it. It's just wealth extraction. They don't create anything. They're just extracting wealth from the people. And so, yes, the problem isn't Social Security. The problem isn't public education. These things work. Medicare works. The problem is the billionaires. You can't do two things at the same time. You can't provide guaranteed health care for everyone in this country and have a handful of CEOs who make more money than can be spent in, generations. You can't do both of those at the same time. And even if you stay firmly in a capitalist system, you're like, okay, fine, you can make money off of things, but you can't make money off of people's lives. You can't make money off of holding people hostage with the insulin that they need every day, just like we need oxygen every day, with insulin vials that were invented over 100 years ago. In my eyes, you can't have a system that allows a billionaire to hold that vial behind their back and say, you're not getting it unless you pay me every penny that you have and every penny that you can borrow. And then maybe I'll give you some, and I'm going to increase the price next year.
Yeah, no, it's exactly it's what we talked about yesterday. In fact, Wendell Parter has a new report out that said that the big insurance revenues and profits from 2012 till now, the last decade, have gone up. Revenue up 300%, profits up 287%. That they profited almost $70 billion, and that's beyond all of the CEO costs, all the labor costs, everything. That's pure profit in their pockets that didn't go to healthcare. And and then you tell me, hey, we can't cover people. We can't get free insulin. We can't make sure that people get the life-saving treatments that they need. It's ridiculous. But then it comes back to taking on that greed. So again, I come back to the last question I've got, because this is a political issue. This comes back to us organizing. This comes back to us, standing together and taking off the red hats and the blue hats, and figuring out, maybe putting on a hard hat and rebuilding some things. Do you see that possible?
I do. I think it'll take hard hats, seniors, students, workers across the country standing together. And I know sometimes Americans don't like to watch global news, but if you look at what the French working people did when their elites said, oh, well, we're going to just take away, they were just trying to take their, the full benefit age to where it is in America, 67. And the whole country stood up and was like, the hell you are.
I thought they wanted to go to 64. I thought they wanted to go from 62 to 64.
I thought, so 1 year. I thought you know what? I bet you're totally correct. And I just couldn't conceive in my brain that our system was so much worse than where they are. Our first retirement age is 62, the earliest you can claim benefits. And then it goes up, your benefits go up every year that you delay claiming benefits. But to the political issue, that's what it's going to take.
Yeah.
Politicians are never the answer. They're lagging indicators.
They're the tools.
It's going to take a popular movement, and it does have to be intergenerational. It has to be, interracial, all ethnicities, all races, working people. That's where the mass of people are. And just remember that there's hundreds of billionaires in this country, and there's hundreds of millions, 350 million people in this country. So the reason that things like the disaster in East Palestine happen is not because of the people. It's because of a system that's been corrupted to advance and enrich a few hundred people. And so when you look at it in those terms, yes, they have a lot of money, but they don't have a lot of people.
Well,
so we've got people, and that's how we win.
We've outprocreated them. We just have to come together. And to steal a line from Rupert Murdoch, it's not about red or blue, it's about green.
That is Rupert Murdoch's entire outlook on life. And I do hope that a bunch of that green transfers from News Corp or Fox, whatever his corporate entity is, right into the coffers of Dominion, because I think that it's such a clear case where this corporation, in order to advance false propaganda that enriched them, put the people working in this just totally random company completely at risk.
Yep. It's all about the money.
All about the money.
All about the money. But Alex, I appreciate the time as always. Great stuff. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Rick.
Our good friend Alex Lawson. Make sure you check out the work they do over at Social Security Works. SocialSecurityWorks.org, the website. Right back with your thoughts. Stick around to listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. From the top.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1942. That was the day that Sue Cowan Williams filed a lawsuit for equal pay for black teachers in Little Rock, Arkansas. 86 black teachers worked in the city's segregated school system. They were all members of the Little Rock Classroom Teachers Association. In 1941, the teachers formed a salary adjustment committee to look into pay discrimination. What they found there was a wide gap between black and white salaries. The average white elementary school teacher made $526 a year, while the black teacher earned only $321. White high school teachers brought home $856 a year, while black teachers only made $567. Backed with this research, the committee presented a petition to the school board demanding an end to pay discrimination. The board tabled the petition, and that summer passed another round of unequal pay raises. The teachers then approached the NAACP and asked them to handle their case. Thurgood Marshall agreed to take up the lawsuit. Marshall would go on to become the first black U.S. Supreme Court justice. Sue Cowan Williams, the head of the English department at Dunbar High School, was selected as the plaintiff for the case. The teachers lost their lawsuit and then won on appeal, but Williams paid a price for her involvement. The next school year, the school district did not renew her contract. She was finally rehired to teach at Dunbar a decade later. But first, the school's superintendent called Williams to ask her if she had, quote, learned her lesson. It was a lesson that many workers have learned, that there is often a high personal cost for standing up for justice on the job. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
It is all about the greed. Alex is absolutely right. It's about the greed. And, I remember growing up during that, the greed is good era, the ones who dies with the most toys wins, the trickle down era that, we're going to give the rich people all they want. And they, in turn, they're going to take care of us. And anybody feeling okay with that? Because, again, every one of the institutions that our great-grandparents and our grandparents' generations built, strong unions to fight for better wages, hours, conditions from the wealth that your labor creates, health insurance, that when you get sick, you get cared for. And not the kind of, hey, how much can you not pay or die health insurance, but actually, here's my card, I need help. And retirement security, the kind of institutions that were a social safety net in government, that the unlucky who aren't going to fall through the cracks. And Republicans have done their foolhardy best to, well, destroy all of that, all in the name of greed and more for the handfuls. And you see this played out in instance after instance. And, you know, the explosion in Ohio, well, the couple of explosions in Ohio, perfect examples. We've deregulated because, the regulations are costly. It's going to take money out of the wealth class's pocket. There won't be as much dividends to be handed out. You know, job-killing regulations, Rick. You know, what do we need, 4, 5, 6 people on a train for when we can have 3, maybe 2, maybe 1, maybe none? Wouldn't it be great if we had no one on that train? Same thing comes up for, the future. And we're going to hear the rollouts for automation. And look, automation is going to come. I'm not a Luddite. I think it's going to happen. We just have to figure out how working people, again, don't get screwed over and over. I go to the local checkout at the grocery store. Was there today. Do you know the checkout counter where the person is now the shortest line? Because they've already trained us to go to the self-checkouts. And I'm going, wow. And did the prices come down? Oh, no, they didn't. That one item that I planned on spending $8 ended up costing me $70. Who benefits from that? Follow the money. Cicero's cui bono, to whose benefit? It's always the handful. It's always the rich and powerful. And as long as they can keep us pitted against each other, fighting over red hats and blue hats, fighting over, nonsense characters, they're going to continue to rob us blind. And this is one of my great frustrations, because we get into these silos and we bomb each other. And I'm going to score my point because I'm right, instead of going, how do we fix this situation? How do we do what the greatest generation did? And, I used to fight back against, my grandparents' generation being the greatest generation, arguing, look, their backs were against the wall. They had no choice. But when you sit back and look at what they did, they built for the future. Not just their future, but the future of their children and their grandchildren. They built infrastructure. They invested in a safety net that made sure that people didn't fall through. And now we hear people screaming and hollering, Republicans going, we can't have that woke stuff, like food stamps to feed children. It's nuts. As they attempt to, again, privatize and profitize what we do for ourselves. Public education is on the chopping block. They are working diligently to profitize public education. And the sad reality is their messaging is brilliant. These are advertising slicksters, man. These are the Madison Avenue folks. These are the focus group tested, think tank approved folks. They know the buzzwords it's going to make you go, oh yeah, maybe that would be great. They're the people who are selling the Medicare Advantage because, hey, there's some bells and whistles. But when you really need it, if you get really sick, you're screwed. They know, they got the con. Question is when do we wake up and fight back? Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you grab the podcast if you missed any portion of the show.
This wild weather.
It's absolutely crazy.
What a wild sort of
bizarro thing to happen this time of year.
It is bizarro.
Bizarro weather whiplash as winter gets warmer and weirder in the U.S.
What's going to happen 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now?
Rising concerns about the long-term impact of the Ohio chemical train derailment. Plus,
maybe the regulation needs to be there. I think there needs to be, there's a widespread sentiment to have a look at the whole rail industry, what the lobbyists are doing.
Fox News discovers that regulations protect the public.
All of those discoveries and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
East Palestine, Ohio got visits from both Donald Trump and Pete Buttigieg, but some Fox personalities insisted that others really should have been there too.
Think about the environmental activists and corporate America. They weren't there. I mean, with the activists, this is an Aaron Brockovich moment. I mean, there was a blockbuster Oscar-winning movie written about something like this.
Aaron Brockovich is actually in East Palestine tonight, right now.
She is, but where's Julia Roberts?
What?
What indeed? This is your Green News Report.
You realise Julia Roberts is an actor, right? She's not actually Erin Brockovich. What the is wrong with you?
Okay, Desi Doyen, before we get to Ohio, just a quick question. What the hell is going on with the weather across the entire country?
Yes, it is definitely weird. Weather whiplash hit across the U.S. over the weekend after an epic storm brought heavy snow, ice, and rain from the west coast across the northern half of the country. It even included an extremely rare blizzard warning for Los Angeles.
On the upside, the mountains and foothills were beautiful out here in Los Angeles on Sunday, covered with snowfall.
The cold, snow, and ice in the north was in sharp contrast to simultaneous record-breaking hot February temperatures in the east and southeast, with temperatures hitting in the 80s. It hit 102 degrees in Falcon Lake, Texas, one of the hottest temperatures ever recorded in the lower 48 so early in the year. Then the same storm system generated at least 9 tornadoes and destructive winds across the southern plains on Monday, knocking out power and killing at least one person in Oklahoma. If confirmed, the outbreak would set a record for the most tornadoes ever recorded in the month of February.
We have so broken our climate.
Climate change is making winter weather warmer and weirder.
I knew it.
That's according to a new analysis by climate data firm Climate Central, which found that winter in the U.S. is warming up, particularly in the Northeast and upper Midwest, where winter temperatures have warmed 5 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit since the 1980s. Climate scientists say more heat energy in the system is intensifying extreme weather events. It's also playing havoc with crops that require persistent cold temperatures like apples, cherries, and blueberries.
Oh, I'm sure it'll be fine.
In Europe, an unusually warm, precipitation-free winter has deepened an ongoing historic drought. Lack of snow in the Alps is hammering winter tourism revenue and raising concerns for drought in the spring. Little to no snowpack to feed rivers, streams, and reservoirs throughout the spring is a major concern now for farmers planting crops and for shipping, as Europe's rivers continue to run at or near historic lows. Here in the U.S., in the ongoing toxic chemical train derailment disaster in East Palestine, Ohio, officials still say that tests of air and water remain below levels of concern, but an independent analysis by Texas A&M University has found slightly elevated levels of 9 chemicals at the derailment site and warns of potential long-term health impacts from low-level chronic exposure if the levels persist. The EPA has begun testing groundwater in the area and has taken over shipment of contaminated wastewater and soil from the cleanup to ensure that it goes to EPA-approved facilities. Elected Republicans and right-wing media have developed a sudden interest in this one industrial pollution disaster and have attempted to turn the derailment into a political proxy war. In a press conference late last week in East Palestine, Biden Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg called on Republicans to make good on their newfound interest in regulation and public safety and called on the rail industry to join in.
Norfolk Southern and the other freight rail companies need to stop fighting us every time we try to do a regulation in order to hold them accountable and their other railroad companies accountable for their safety record.
Yeah, I mean, Republicans have been fighting regulations for years and years, including on the railways, and now all of a sudden they're just furious that there weren't enough regulations on the railways, please.
And finally, some good news for the planet. Since the inauguration of Brazil's new president, known simply as Lula, the rate of deforestation in the Amazon rainforest has plunged by more than 60%, just as Lula promised during his election campaign.
Nice. Thank you. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So again, I think the bumper sticker, I'm going to come up with a bumper sticker because I've been saying this for years. It's not about red or blue, it's about green. But to hear Rupert Murdoch say that about the F channel and the fake news that comes out of it, agreeing that, all the hosts were full of what, and admitting, it's not about fair and balanced. It's not about facts. It's about money. And the fact that you had the schmucker going on about that he's not a news person, he's entertainment. It's just one of those things that you go, we've been saying this for years, but to hear it come from them, it's kind of still special for me. And here to share some thoughts on the most recent information coming out of this Dominion lawsuit, and maybe there's going to be more fun and entertainment. I've asked Andrew Lawrence to come talk with us. Andrew is the Deputy Director of Rapid Response over at Media Matters for America, MediaMatters.org, the website. Andrew, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, of course. Anytime, Rick. Thank you for having me. We have a lot to talk about tonight.
So, I look at this statement, it's not about red or blue. It's about green.
Yep.
The most honest thing I think you'll ever hear come out of someone from Fox News.
Yep, and we have been saying it for years. I know you've been saying it for years. It's obvious to any partial observer who puts on Fox News, and it's this is why we have the critical race theory panic and the trans panic. It's not just January 6th, which is what this Dominion filing is about, those lies, but it is. This is how Fox News chooses their programming, is how to keep eyeballs on their channel, how to keep people engaged and enraged, and that one quote just sums it all up so perfectly.
Yep. No, it's like any drug dealer. You got to keep them addicted to your drug, and the drug of the F channel and the right-wing talk space is all about outrage. So the more outrage candy they can shove down people's throats, the higher their profit. It's that simple. And again, it's a metric that we've talked about, that I've talked about on this show for almost 2 decades now. It's not surprising, but again, there's something a little special to have him have put his hand on the Bible, swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So help him God, and him to come out with that.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And one thing I was thinking about just before joining you here is, it's not about red, it's not about blue, it's about green. He really means that. Like, these election lies that they were pushing also really hurt the Republicans in the 2022 midterms. I mean, democracy was a giant issue there as well. And, so it's hurting the Republican Party as well. And it's all about putting money into, Rupert Murdoch's pocket, Tucker Carlson, all the hosts, all the boards. And, appealing to the lowest common denominator isn't something new. But I think doing it with the whiff of credibility that you have with a news channel, it becomes something incredibly dangerous. Yeah. And they just don't care because they're getting rich off of it.
No, but here's the thing. Here's the thing that I think is different here, because if I remember right, several years before this, you had Les Moonves say, Trump may be bad for the country, but he's good for our profits. The difference there, I think, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, is that news or that organization wasn't making stuff up. Wasn't reporting things that they knew were factually incorrect. That to me is the difference. That they would literally. It really is bread and circus. It really is political theater, and truth be damned.
100%, yeah, and it's all motivated by profit, and all of these channels, CNN, MSNBC, they get things wrong But I believe that they try to get things right, at least, and they don't knowingly push stuff out there that they know to be false, especially when motivated by profit. And that is 100% what Fox News is doing, and everybody is in on it. Everybody at Fox News knows what's going on. It's very explicit behind the scenes, and I get frustrated because it's so open and out there in the public, and their viewers just don't seem to care. I'm sure you've gotten the same thing on Twitter with Fox News viewers coming in and defending them, even since these filings have dropped, and it blows my mind how desperate they are just to have somebody tell them, some person on TV tell them that they're right about things that they're wrong about.
Yeah.
It's the only thing they care about, and it's incredibly frustrating.
No, it's crazy. But here's the thing, and I'll throw this to you because I used to go to all the talkers conventions for years.
Mm-hmm.
I would go to New York and you rub elbows with Hannity and O'Reilly and Alex Jones and all of them. And I always came away with this feeling that none of them believed any of the stuff that they were spewing, because in person they were decent people to talk to. It was all about the sale. And you look at the responses coming out of these emails from Tucker and Ingram and the rest of them, they knew what they were saying was patently false. They knew they were in on this. So the question for me has always been, which is worse? Someone who truly believes, they were the true believers of the big lie, and they were pushing it, and they were the true believers, or the people who knew that they were selling snake oil and it was just about the money. And I've always said it's the people, it's just about the money, because I can almost forgive a true believer for being stupid. But the other to me, there's just something so much worse about that.
It's that cynicism and the nihilism almost. I mean, they are causing destruction. They are inspiring mass shootings and storming of the Capitol, all of these things, and they don't believe it, and they're motivated just by adding a 20th wing to their mansion in New Hampshire. It's very depressing. Yeah, it's quite upsetting. I don't know which one. I don't know which one is totally worse though, because at the end the damage is the same. The damage to the country is really the same. But yeah, to just be so open about it that you're doing this just to line your own pocket is really it's just so cynical. It's just so gross.
You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Andrew Lawrence. He's the Deputy Director of Rapid Response over at Media Matters for America, MediaMatters.org, the website. We'll get links out on social media. So I guess the question now becomes, will this matter? Because, when this first broke, I said, look, people like me already knew this stuff. We already believed this is how they were operating because we paid attention. The people who drank the Kool-Aid, who are stuffed on the outrage candy, they're never going to believe it. So do you have any hope that the folks who are the Fox viewers buy it, or is there some mythical middle that you see this affecting? I guess, bottom line, does this matter?
Yes, I think this does matter. I think it matters quite a bit. Now, I don't think that it's going to matter to those P1, those hardcore Fox News viewers that turn it on as a Pavlovian response every single night. They don't even know this is going on. They haven't heard these quotes. They don't know about that. But I do think there is a danger. One of the largest dangers with the Fox News and conservative media in general is when their BS breaks that bubble and gets into the mainstream and starts infecting it. And we can see that with the trans panic, the way that it sort of left that bubble and seeped into mainstream media, But I think something like this, the credibility of the network, it just takes such a huge hit, such an enormous hit they're clowns over there at this point. It's anything that Fox News is a joke. And then you got to take into consideration the possible financial penalties that Fox News is going to face. And I'm no lawyer. I know how hard defamation is to prove and to win a case on in the States. But the fact that it's gotten this far, and it's so damaging. That's just the stuff that we've seen as well. That is just so damaging. It looks really, really bad for Fox News. And look, if it's not about red or blue, but it's about green, and this guy gets fined $1.5 billion, fingers crossed, that could lead to a change in behavior. Maybe. I mean, we'll see. But I guess that's sort of the hope right now, at least.
Or my other thought in this is, the people who this will affect, where they go, oh, they lied to us, they go to a crazier outlet. Some of the more extreme ones that have been booted off of another cable provider or a satellite provider that I'm not going to give any credit to or name, but that they get their sources of outrage candy from somewhere even more detached from reality. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and it's these people, these hardcore viewers, consumers of conservative media, they really are addicted to just being told that they're right. That's what they need. They need somebody on the TV, or they need their podcast host, whoever, to tell them that they're right about things, even if they're wrong. It doesn't matter. They can know that they're lying to them. It doesn't matter. Just tell me I'm right.
So I'm going to ask you about this, because it's now being reported that Fox evidently, and I'm not saying this is absolute truth, but it's being reported that Fox provided the Trump campaign with confidential information about Biden's ads and debate strategy. I mean, Trump still lost, but that, and I don't know, is this illegal? It's certainly unethical. Does this matter?
Yeah, I mean, I think it matters a lot. I don't know how any advertiser. I mean, we're talking about politics here, and we live in the political world. Coca-Cola doesn't want Pepsi knowing what their ad strategy is. Ford doesn't want Toyota knowing what their ad strategy is. And I would think if you're an advertiser, it would give you pause to giving these people money and showing them what your ad strategy is. And, again, I'm no lawyer, but it feels really, really illegal.
If not illegal, at least unethical. I mean, at the minimum.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that there's some sort of non-disclosure agreement as a part of ad contracts. I don't know that, but yeah, either way, it's incredibly unethical. But then I think we need to look to the Democrats to take a stand here as well. I don't think Fox News belongs in the White House briefing room at this point. I mean, why not just put the head of the RNC in there? Why not put Trump Jr. in the White House press briefing room to ask questions? They don't belong in there. I don't think they should get any access. I think the FBI director on Fox News earlier tonight is like, that's an abomination. You should be going on there after all of this comes out and feeding into their talking points and lending the credibility of your agency and the government overall to Fox News. So I think we need to actually pressure Democrats as well to take a stand here. And that has been an ongoing battle at Media Matters, trying to pressure our side into taking more of a stand against Fox News. And hopefully this sort of sparks that again.
Andrew, it's not just Fox News. It's on any issue.
Yeah.
Yep. Getting them to take a stronger stance, a more militant stance on a lot of issues is, well, I'm not going to beat up on them too badly. They've got their problems.
It's a constant frustration of mine as well.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. But here's the other part of this, and I think a bigger part of the Fox News power is that you've got our political, our elected officials who are doing everything they can possibly do to get the attention of these people, because it is a money maker. Outrage is a moneymaker. If they can get their 15 minutes on Fox, they can sell their crappy books. They can go to their all of these rallies and all of these conferences they've got. There's a lot of cash to be made as a legislator, as a former legislator, especially in the Fox world. And this is something I think we've got to be talking more about. Is news about news, or is it about entertainment?
Right. And I think that, one thing I've said before is, you look at Fox News when Roger Ailes was there, and the guy was an absolute monster, and a horrible, horrible human being. But the guy knew how to run a TV network, especially a propaganda network. And when Roger Ailes was there, Fox News really existed to prop up the Republican Party. And since Trump, it's really been flipped on its head to where now the Republican Party exists to prop up Fox News. And Fox News is giving them marching orders. They ran their campaigns the way that Tucker Carlson told them to. They let Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham pick Dr. Oz and Herschel Walker and J.D. Vance. They're letting them pick their candidates. And so it's completely flipped around on its head. And it's a real issue, because if the Republican Party doesn't care about winning majorities and appealing to more voters, and they're only going after that 1% of the country that watches Fox News and that is rabid, they're going to get more extreme, and we've seen that. We've seen the proof of that since Trump. And I really think that, like, Trump sort of ignited that to where it's just about getting on TV. It's just about selling your book. It's just about grifting these people, grifting your followers, and they're so shameless with it, shameless about it. And I would. That's another thing I would like to see Democrats try to make that case to these Republican voters as well.
So, last question I've got for you is there a way? I get people asking me all the time, how do we compete with the Fox Newses? How do you legislate something? I had someone actually the other day say, we need the fairness doctrine. I'm like, that ship has sailed. You should forget those words in that combination ever existed. But what do you do in this environment? Is there a way to hold these organizations accountable outside of what Dominion is doing, just trying to sue them? And as you pointed out, this is an incredibly difficult lift. Is there a legislative way, or is this just this is the Wild West of media?
One thing that I keep going back to as a potential solution is, when you get cable or now even streaming, YouTube, Sling, all of that, when you order that, you get a package with all the channels, and that's what you're paying for, $70 a month or whatever it is, and you're getting all of these channels. And every single one of those channels gets a chunk of your money. And Fox News actually gets the second highest chunk out of all the channels other than ESPN. So if you have cable, you're giving Fox News nearly $2 a month, every single month, whether you watch it or not. What I think would really help is if there was legislation passed that forced these cable companies and these streaming companies to offer a la carte packages where you only pay for the channels that you watch. I think that would force Fox News to become a little bit more mainstream so that they would have to rely on advertisers again. And they can't do that right now because they're so extreme that no advertiser wants to touch them outside of Mike Lindell. So I think that would really, really help. And then it would force all of these news channels to offer a service. It wouldn't just be talking heads. If I'm going to subscribe to a news channel, I'm going to want to actually get the news and not like talk radio that's just, telling me that I'm right about everything. So I really think that legislation forcing a la carte packaging with cable companies and cable channels, I think it would really help. At least, at the very least, it would help. Maybe not solve everything. I do think it would help a lot, though.
Now, on that vein, because I've had a couple listeners who've thrown ideas out similar to what you've laid out, only they've gone a different direction instead of the a la carte to making sure that there's balance, to steal the Fox frame of fair and balance, that for every Fox News, there's got to be something equal on the other side. Now, granted, there is nothing equal on the other side. There is no infrastructure on the left, and maybe this would be a way to encourage that kind of infrastructure. I don't know, but any thoughts on that idea?
Yeah, Fox News on the left, I think there is an audience that is hungry for actual left-wing news. And they're not getting it right now. And I think that, we can say CNN and MSNBC are liberal, but they're not. I have never seen somebody advocate for like social universal health care on either one of those channels, just as one example. I think the issue is that in order to start a channel like that, you need large corporate backers. And if you're going to be a left-wing channel, you're going to go after corporations pretty hard and the way that they treat their workers and people. And it's just, I think that is a very large conundrum to get over. I'm not smart enough to sort of figure out where the money comes from.
No, I know that problem very well. Thank you for pointing that out. I know it well. But it's worth looking into. But Andrew, I appreciate the time. As always, you guys do incredible work. Keep it up, and I look forward to having you get back again real soon.
Anytime, Rick. I really appreciate it.
Good stuff. Andrew Lawrence, he is the Deputy Director of Rapid Response there at Media Matters for America. Check out their website, MediaMatters.org. We'll get links out on social media. Quick break. Right back with your thoughts. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Marjorie Taylor Greene making a name for herself again today. Not only did she go after whining that people were harassing her at a restaurant. Remember, this is a woman who made her name chasing a teenager down the street, screaming at him on social media. Basically attacking this kid. Yelling at him. As he's walking down the street. She's upset that someone did that to her. It's one of those things where you go, live by the sword, die by the sword kind of scenario. But the reason I bring her up is her and Thomas Massie, the only two Republicans, the only two people in the House to vote against a resolution mourning the loss of life in Turkey and Syria because of the big earthquakes there. Just two. Massie and Greene. It was 414-2 vote. How do you do that? What kind? Again, these are God-fearing Christian folk. Very, very strange times we live in, and very, very, very scary times. When that is the face of religion in this country, it's frightening. But here's the weird thing, and Andrew alluded to it a moment ago that Fox bought on to the Trump. He got onto the Trump train, and it was all about the cash. It was all about the money. This stuff coming out now, evidently has just driven Trump nuts, and he's actually just furious with Rupert Murdoch. And what he put out on social media? Why is Rupert Murdoch throwing his anchors under the table? It's under the bus, you moron. Which also happens to be killing his case and infuriating his viewers, who will again be leaving in droves. They already are. Because he had to tell the truth. And this is one of those things where I go back to when people go into court. And if you remember all of the aftermath of the 2020 election, I kept saying, look, I don't care what Rudy Giuliani is saying out in front of the Four Seasons landscaping parking lot. I care about what Rudy says in court when he puts his hand on the Bible, swears to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help him God. That's what I'm listening to. And all of the shenanigans that they said here in Gettysburg when they had their little kangaroo hearing where Trump blathered on the phone for an hour, all of the made-up allegations of I saw this and that not under oath, that they threw out as their proof that the election was rigged to get Fox News to report that all of these nefarious things were happening. They didn't take into a courtroom. And I kept saying, look, if it's true, if any of this stuff you're saying is true, take it into the courtroom and I will then believe you. But it's not until you get in front of that person with a robe on and you put your hand on that book you say you love so much, and then you blather it after the threat of perjury is over your head, then I'll believe you. They didn't do any of that because none of them wanted to lose their law license, no matter how drunk Rudy Giuliani was. And what I find interesting coming out of this is one of the executives at Fox, this Cole Allen. he evidently, said to Murdoch that Rudy's unhinged and has been for a while. I think the booze has got him. Again, I go back to he's been off the wheel for a while. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1942. That was the day that Sue Cowan Williams filed a lawsuit for equal pay for black teachers in Little Rock, Arkansas. 86 black teachers worked in the city's segregated school system. They were all members of the Little Rock Classroom Teachers Association. In 1941, the teachers formed a salary adjustment committee to look into pay discrimination. What they found there was a wide gap between black and white salaries. The average white elementary school teacher made $526 a year, while the black teacher earned only $321. White high school teachers brought home $856 a year, while black teachers only made $567. Backed with this research, the committee presented a petition to the school board demanding an end to pay discrimination. The board tabled the petition, and that summer passed another round of unequal pay raises. The teachers then approached the NAACP and asked them to handle their case. Thurgood Marshall agreed to take up the lawsuit. Marshall would go on to become the first black U.S. Supreme Court justice. Sue Cowan Williams, the head of the English department at Dunbar High School, was selected as the plaintiff for the case. The teachers lost their lawsuit and then won on appeal, but Williams paid a price for her involvement. The next school year, the school district did not renew her contract. She was finally rehired to teach at Dunbar a decade later. But first, the school's superintendent called Williams to ask her if she had, quote, learned her lesson. It was a lesson that many workers have learned, that there is often a high personal cost for standing up for justice on the job. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
The Wreck of the Old 97 is a classic bluegrass song recounting a spectacular train crash in 1903, caused by the company's demand that the engineer speed down a dangerous track to deliver cargo on time. 120 years later, we have the wreck of the Norfolk Southern, a devastating crash caused by the corporate demand that it be allowed to run an ill-equipped, understaffed, largely unregulated 2-mile train carrying flammable, cancer-causing toxics through communities, putting profit over people and public safety. This rolling bomb of a train was hardly unique, for the handful of multi-billion-dollar railroad giants that control the industry also control lawmakers and regulators who are supposed to protect the public from public-be-damned profiteers. A measure of their arrogance came just 2 years ago when an Ohio legislative committee dared to consider a modest proposal for just a bit more rail safety. Norfolk Southern executives squawked like Chicken Little, asserting a plutocratic doctrine of corporate supremacy on such decisions. They even imperiously proclaimed that state lawmakers have no right to interfere in safety matters. Ohio's Chamber of Commerce dutifully echoed Norfolk's concern for profit over people, testifying that, quote, Ohio's business climate would be negatively impacted by the bill. Never mind that Ohio's public safety climate can literally be negatively impacted by train wrecks. The Chamber postulated that a crew safety provision in the Ohio bill was illegal because, quote, it would interfere with the employment relationship between employers and their employees. Yes, that's a corporate claim that executives have an inalienable right to endanger workers. This is Jim Hightower saying, sure enough, bowing to the corporate powers, Ohio lawmakers rejected the safety bill. And that, boys and girls, is why train catastrophes keep happening.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I found a really great piece over at the Philly Inquirer. And again, it's something we've been talking about for a very long time. this idea that, the right's been throwing out that whole, job killing regulation thing, that every regulation is bad and it's going to kill jobs. And I always retort with, what happened to, why not follow that up with people killing lack of regulation? I look at what's going on out in East Palestine as an example of that. Now, do we need giant flaming examples? No, this stuff happens all the time. Corporate America has figured out that they can lay the externalities of their business right at the doorstep of we the people through our limited health access, through the cancers and the diseases that their products cause, and a government that really doesn't seem to care that much. Just look at how things are going. So I said, when I saw this, got to get my friend Will Bunch back on the show to talk about his most recent piece. Pennsylvania has its own East Palestine. It's not a train. It's over at inquirer.org. Will, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah. Hey, Rick, thanks for having me.
So this is one of those things that I've been talking about for a long time. This idea that we've deregulated. If you go back to the Trump era, he was so proud of the fact that he was cutting 22 regulations for every new one. He was going to be the deregulator in chief. And now we look at this horrible outcome, and some of it laid right at his feet and the Republican deregulation fetish.
Yeah, East Palestine clearly, on some level, is the effect of deregulation. We know that trains definitely need better braking systems than what we have. There's a lot of back and forth about what rule might have applied to this train or whatever. But the bottom line is that Norfolk Southern spent millions of dollars either first donating to politicians and then hiring lobbyists to make sure that the regulations on them were as little as possible to cut into their profits, whether it was the brakes, whether it was having the right number of workers on each crew, and the rail unions have been warning about these problems for years, and Norfolk Southern fought it tooth and nail and almost brought contract negotiations to the brink of a strike last fall to try and prevent trains from, for workers from having sick leave so that they'll be, healthy and be able to do the job and be able to do their shifts. So, yeah, absolutely. And the other thing, and the reason I wrote this piece, though, it was funny. All of a sudden, the Republicans have found religion around East Palestine, right? That, oh yes, corporations are doing wrong by the people who live in the forgotten Americans who live in these communities in the Rust Belt. And yet, I'm not arguing with them. They're right. A big corporation did do this town wrong by not keeping its trains safe and by creating this hazardous situation. But what a couple things made me laugh. One is just, the biggest thing is the way that they act like East Palestine was some kind of one-off, like this has never happened before. Yeah. Wow, we just noticed that corporations are doing dirty by the average citizen, and the thing is, if you don't have to look very hard to find all these situations where corporations have done the same thing. They've lobbied for as little regulation as possible. They've, fought the kind of safety and health and environmental things that a strong union would help put in place. They fought against unions, and so the column I wrote today looked at a situation. It's literally 20 miles down the road from East Palestine, right over the border in Pennsylvania, right on the Ohio River. It's this brand new shell. Basically, it's a plastics plant.
The cracker plant.
Yeah, it's an ethane cracker. It takes a byproduct. Excuse me. It takes a byproduct from the natural gas that gets fracked in Pennsylvania and Ohio and in that region, and cracks them. It's this process that makes them into these tiny little pellets of plastic, millions of them, which then gets made into toys and auto parts and plastic packaging and things like that. And the fossil fuel industry has been really trying to gin up interest in any kind of plastic they can make, because they have all this stuff that they're pulling from the ground and they don't know what to do with all of it, and they're they're willing to spend billions to get you to spend billions to make a market for this stuff. And the thing is, so this $6 billion plant that they built, it just opened late last year. It finally is up and running. Environmental groups and others said this is going to be a disaster for climate change. And beyond that, just the regular air pollution that comes from this thing, VOCs, chemicals like benzene. You know what benzene is? It's in the gasoline. It's like the fumes.
It's a carcinogen.
Yeah, it's a carcinogen. And if you're even exposed, just the small amounts of it over time, you could get various respiratory illnesses or rashes or headaches. So this plant opens up, and they were given a permit, the amount of chemicals like benzene that they could pollute the air with in a given year. And environmental groups were saying these limits are way too high. This is a dangerous level that you're allowing. Well, forget that, because in just the first 2 months of the plant, they exceeded what was supposed to be their limit for the entire year. So,
well, there's a shocker.
Yeah, right. It was supposed to be their limit for 12 months. They blew right through it in 2 months, and having all kinds of malfunctions at this plant. And when that happens, they have to do flaring. If you've been by one of these giant plants, maybe you've seen something like this, where they're all of a sudden they're sending flames into the sky, and they're turning the sky orange, and they're burning hydrocarbons, and it's causing serious air pollution. And it's funny, East Palestine, everybody talks about that black mushroom cloud over East Palestine. That was basically the same thing. The company, in that case, Norfolk Southern, made a decision to burn these chemicals because they were afraid they would blow up otherwise and whatever. That's the same thing that's happening at the Shell plant. They're afraid that their chemical problems are going to blow up, so they have these flares, and they're polluting the heck out of the environment. And it's only been open for a couple months. And unlike East Palestine, the J.D. Vances of the world or the Tucker Carlsons aren't saying boo about this situation.
No, they're not saying boo about any of this, because here's the thing.
Although frankly, neither yet are really any Democrats either. So it's not.
And this is where I come back to this moment. There's this political moment, and the Republicans have now found religion, as I think you've put it on. Now we got to care. We've got to make this an issue. And I would argue they're not making it about corporate greed. They're not making it about regulation. They're making it about Pete Buttigieg. They're making it about Joe Biden. They're covering Norfolk Southern in a way that is really masterful, because they're giving someone to blame. They're giving the people of East Palestine someone to blame, and it's Biden and Buttigieg, who did exactly what they were supposed to do. Never mind that, but it's you got a boogeyman. When the one thing they know how to do that they're comfortable with is being anti-government. They're anti-corporation never, right? Those are their, and that's my point.
Donors, their patrons. But saying government, is bad. Government doesn't work. Government, we need to shrink government because it's wasteful. I mean, their message makes no sense. On one hand, they're blaming Biden and Buttigieg and these federal agencies. Frankly, we're learning they don't even know which agencies do what. There's just a lot of ignorance.
Well, they don't care. This is the thing.
They don't care.
Matter of that. They just don't care.
But they're screaming. They're screaming, why didn't the government do something? But they're the ones who shrunk government to the size of a bathtub, right? They're the ones who eliminated these regulations that could have been tools in the toolbox of fixing these problems. And they want to reduce the number of people in these who work in these federal agencies. I mean, we saw it with the IRS, where that's a different situation.
No, but to your point here, Will, this is important, because I've had numerous people reach out to me and go, well, Joe Biden's president. He could have undone all of the horrible things that Trump did. He could have re-regulated all that stuff. And there's this twisted belief that you could just flip, when he became president on the 20th, he could flip the switch and it was all back to where it was 4 years ago. All of the damage Trump did could be undone with one flip of the switch. That's just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's not possible for a bunch of reasons. I mean, anything he has to do legislatively, he can't, because the Republicans can filibuster anything. I mean, that's the thing. Once with our system of so-called checks and balances, once you get something done, it's hard to get something undone.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think Biden could have done more, and Buttigieg could have done more, and probably now that they've seen how this went wrong in East Palestine, they probably will do more. But
I think that was just from a messaging front.
I think you're right. But yeah.
I think they did. I think the machinery worked as it was supposed to. Within hours, you had people from the EPA and the NTSB. The machinery was moving. They were waiting on the governor to make his choices. If it were me, and the only thing that I think Biden did wrong and Buttigieg did wrong is 2 days afterwards or a day after it happened, there should have been a line of people waiting at the border and them on TV that night going, hey, we're just waiting for the governor's call. We've got everybody ready to go. We've got all this stuff, all these resources just raring and ready. We're waiting for that governor to do his job to tell us to come in. And they didn't do that. That's where I think they fall down. Democrats are horrible at messaging and horrible at the kind of political theater that Republicans are so good at.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of opportunities for that here, right? I mean, if you're Chuck Schumer and you're running the Senate, or in the House or whatever, you say, all right, well, you think this train derailment was a disaster and you want to fix things. Here's the bill. I'm introducing a railroad safety bill that'll crack down on Norfolk Southern. I'm sure based on what you guys have been saying publicly the last 2 weeks, I'm sure all of you are going to vote for this, right?
Yep.
And, put up or shut up. And of course, we know what would happen. Of course, they would freak out and their lobbyists friends would be all over them and they wouldn't be able to do it. And that's great. And we go into 2024 and say, look, we gave these Republicans a chance to do rail safety and they refused to do it. We gave them a chance to stop pollution, like the pollution that's coming from the Shell plant, and they wouldn't do it, because they can't.
Again, it's messaging.
It's a great lever for the Democrats, and I don't know if they're going to use it. They haven't done it yet, so we'll have to see.
Yeah, we'll see. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Will Bunch. He's a national columnist with the Philly Inquirer. You can check out his work at inquirer.org. He's also the author of After the Ivory Tower Falls, How College Broke the American Dream and Blew Up Our Politics and How to Fix It. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at it. Big fan of this book. I do want to change gears a little bit. I guess it's kind of the same thing, actually. It's in the same realm, because I argue, when this derailment happened, it's amazing to me that the people who told me government can't do anything, government shouldn't do anything, government's inept, are the first people to scream, where's the government, when something goes wrong. Right. And I have my Tenther friends also who are saying, where was Biden? Not understanding that their own ideology is keep the federal government out. It's the states that do this. It's very twisted to me, I'll be honest. But I look at this. You wrote a piece not too long ago about how Wall Street finally grew a conscience around climate, and the GOP is strangling it. And I look at Trump's comments this past week that he's vowed to ban these ESG things. Maybe you've heard about them. It's a way of investing in companies that are environmentally, socially, and have good governance policy. This kind of idea that we care about the companies and how horrible they are, and maybe we invest in the good ones. Trump evidently is going to ban these kind of things because, well, oil companies gouged us, which is really twisted to me. I'm curious your thoughts.
I mean, I mean, it's kind of crazy, but like you said, I mean, what the principle here is, some people in the financial world actually sat down and realized, you know what, rather than just only look at what maximizes the quarterly profit, that only look at what makes the most money for the shareholders, without any thought of any of the other stakeholders, including the people who need to breathe the air, around our factories, the people who have to deal with climate change that's caused by our product potentially, none of that matters. And you realize, well, if you look beyond the quarter, if you look 5-10 years down the road, people aren't going to buy our, home improvement products if their homes are underwater because of climate change. there's a bigger picture here, and maybe it's good business to use our investment abilities to do some good things. So I mean, ESG in the financial world, stands for environmental, social, and governance, and it's a principle that you try and invest in people who are doing good things. So I mean, climate is the most obvious example because you invest more in clean energy, wind or solar, and you stop investing in the dirtiest fossil fuels that are causing the worst climate change. And there's just a bunch of Republican governors and Republican legislators, the Rick DeSantis of the world, who are just having a total freak out about that because their base of support is rich oil men, the Koch brothers and people like that, and they just can't have this, and they say, well, they are shortchanging investors because they're not using the right principle. They're not making the most money for their investors.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Will, and this is where, again, I come back to this weird kind of moment, because you have these Republicans who have said for years that they believe in individual rights, they want government out of their lives, the free market. This seems to be something that they would stay the hell out of, because investors are making choices. This is the free market. These companies are saying we're going to attract investors by doing things that they want, as opposed to what we want. I mean, there's a part of me that goes, this is what something you Republicans should be championing as a way forward. We don't need government. We can have the free market solve these problems.
Yeah, I mean, these big financial companies like BlackRock and Vanguard and all these other companies, they wouldn't be making those choices to do this ESG thing if it wasn't good, if they didn't think it was good business, if they didn't think it was good for their company. I mean, they're still at the bottom, at the end of the day, their ultimate purpose is to do what's good for their business. It's just they gave it some thought and they thought, well, you know what, like you said, investors want this. There are benefits, the community benefits from this. We're better citizens. It's just a better situation all around. But it is the free market. They're freely making a decision to make these investments, and you have government saying, no, you can't invest your money this way. You have to invest it that way. I mean that's it's totally topsy turvy, upside down. And that's what somebody like Ron DeSantis is all about, though, right? Yep. I mean, he using state power. Forget these libertarian principles. He wants to use government to influence everything, to destroy his enemies, like Disney. He wants to use government to control what teachers can say in the classroom. It's amazing. I was listening to the news on the radio. I was out doing some errands today and hearing the news, and 3 or 4 of the top stories on the news all were in the same vein of people being afraid, a climate of fear out there, that teachers are afraid to say certain things in their classroom. Another story was about doctors who are terrified now of even mentioning the word abortion because of these laws in Republican states. And there was a study out today of teachers are more, censoring themselves than they did during the era of Joe McCarthy in the 1950s.
Wow.
That's the kind of climate that these allegedly small government Republicans are creating. They've created a big brother that's terrified the average person, teachers and doctors and regular folks, from doing what they do, and even investors.
Yeah, but remember, these are the people who believe in free speech. Will, these are the free speech champions, First Amendment people.
Right, as long as you don't mention abortion or Rosa Parks or it's just crazy.
We do live in interesting times, but good stuff. I appreciate the time, Will. Hope people will take a look at the most recent piece on East Palestine and the train and Pennsylvania's cracker plant. We'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at that. Also, the book After the Ivory Tower Falls. We'll get links out on that as well. Will, I appreciate the time, man.
It was great, Rick. Thanks so much for having me.
Good stuff. Our good friend Will Bunch. Again, make sure you check out the work that he does. We'll get links out. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people on the talk. Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute. Back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, email me, rick at thericksmithshow.com. So, again, another one of these. It's got to be Florida. It's got to be Florida. You got a state senator, a guy named Blaise Inguglia. Blaise Inguglia, a Republican, has introduced Senate Bill 1248. And what does he want to do with Senate Bill 1248, titled the Ultimate Cancel Act? Because evidently Blaise is unhappy with cancel culture. You know, he wants to be able to be homophobic and racist and misogynistic. He wants his God-given right. He says if it's passed, it would ban the Democratic Party. You can't make this up. And this is one of those things where you go, this is where Republicans, they understand bills that are probably never going to hold constitutional muster, but know how to rally the base. And this is where the outrage candy comes in. This is where Blaise is going to get his minute on Tucker. Blaise is going to get his spotlight. Blaise is going to get on the F channel and the podcast circuit because Blaise is outrageous. We're going to ban Democrats. We're going to cancel them. The ultimate cancel culture. This is the world we've come to. And why is he doing it? Because, well, he's angry at Democrats for, caring. And I point to this state senator in Nebraska. Again, there are two different, you got the Florida guy, Blaise, and the state senator from Nebraska, Michaela Cavanaugh. Michaela has said that if the folks there in Nebraska move forward on the anti-trans bill that they are working on, that she will filibuster every piece of legislation. She said she's going to make this legislative session painful. The most painful ever. She said, if this legislature collectively decides that legislating hate against children is our priority, then I'm going to make it painful for everyone. If you want to inflict pain upon our children, I'm going to inflict pain upon this body. I have nothing but time, and I am going to use all of it. I will burn the session to the ground over this bill. And now this I understand. Now the messaging, I'm not crazy about, that you're going to stand on this bill, because for me, it's not about the particular bill. It's about life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. I don't understand all the trans stuff, and I don't even pretend that I do. But what I do understand is I don't want government at all involved in really sensitive family decisions. I know that a zealot government is not a good thing for difficult decisions, especially when you know that these are being put forth for political purposes. I question the motives of every person moving these forward, because it's a national movement. It's a movement to feed the outrage to the minions. But for her, good on her for stepping forward and saying that she's going to fight this. I wish Democrats would do this on a lot of stuff. Now, the thing that's going to be interesting, how fast do Republicans end the filibuster in Nebraska? I'm going to be paying attention. Want to hear your thoughts, though? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Especially the angry ones, and I know I'm going to get some angry ones over my trans comment. Those go to the top, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show.